TheWellnessCouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives. This is Up for a Chat with Cindy O'Meara, Karen Smith, and Kim Morrison.
Here we are, up for a chat about the hottest topics that are important to you, inspiring you to awaken the change within. I'm Karen Smith, and I have the flu.
I'm Kim Morrison.
And she has the flu.
And I'm Cindy O'Meara, and I'm healthy.
And you are 100% fabulous.
I am 100% fabulous.
I just thought we'd get it out there because I think I sound quite nasal. Don't you think? I think I sound a bit nasal on today's podcast, and I thought I'd explain why. So enough about me, less about me, more about you.
What do you think about me?
Oh, I think I'm fabulous. Now, what do you think about me? Stop. So today we've got a really fun podcast. I think it's going to be really fun because it's right up my vegan alley. And it's all about a fabulous fellow who's going to be talking about the magic of the plant kingdom. You see, now, I understand the magic of the plant kingdom, but it's you meat eaters that I think are the worry. So we're going to have somebody who's going to be talking about amazing plants, the technology, the science behind them, the love behind them, the emotion behind them, and all the magic behind plants. And we're also going to be talking about how Kimmy's got something really exciting to be released. So we're going to welcome to Up for a Chat
Dr. Greg Clark. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, welcome.
It's a treat. We've got Dr. Greg Clark over from New Zealand, so you will pick up on the accent. But it's a real treat because Greg and I go back a while. We worked quite a long time ago for a natural skincare company in New Zealand, which is where I got to meet the extraordinarily talented man. And I really... Greg, there's a lot of things about you, but what I'd love for you to share with the listeners is, first of all, your background. What made you wake up one day and go, I love plants? What made you do a PhD in the biology of plants? And what do you do with them exactly?
Okay.
Good question.
Well, I guess I've always been interested in plants. I guess from a young age, just planting seeds with my dad in the vegetable garden and acorns and things like that, and I always found it incredible that from a little acorn you could produce a huge oak tree. So it's always fascinated me just growing plants and growing different types of plants. The other side to it too is people always say, well, animals, those are the interesting things. They run around, they move, all these sort of things. But to me, I find plants extremely interesting because they don't do that. They have to sit in one spot their entire life, and they have to face head on everything that comes at them. So whether it's a disease, whether it's a drought, whether it's any sort of stress, they're out there in the hot sun all day. So they're producing all these things to allow them to survive in that one spot their entire life. So that really fascinated me.
Fascinating. Because they can't run and they can't hide.
No. So everything how they protect themselves has got to be right there in the now. So,
And I bet most of our listeners would not know that a plant protects itself or that a plant has a hormonal system or a communication system. Because, I've been listening to you for the last couple of days, and I'm just fascinated with what plants are capable of doing. And look, I understood there were essential oils that came out of them, but tell us... the details that we would have no idea about with plants, which is everything.
So we've all seen Avatar, no doubt.
Yeah. Yes.
And we've all seen that there's they talk about that intricate network that runs underneath the ground as to how the trees communicate with each other. Is that true?
They do. So plants do have a symbiotic relationship with various fungi and bacteria in the ground. And what it can do is it can connect up the root system across vast differences up to kilometres, where each plant will be interconnected by a fungal hyphae. And there's communication via that way.
Not chatting. What do you mean?
Not chatting, but...
Not like up for a chat.
Often what happens is the plant will release certain things from its root system into the soil to attract these microbes to it and to accelerate the establishment of these networks. And then it's effectively, you get an extension of the root zone, which connects all these plants together. But it's interesting because a plant is fully interacting with its environment. So it's picking up on the cues in the environment, and it responds to those cues, so various threats and those sort of things. And just an example that I always use, if you have this is how it protects itself against sun and those sort of things. If you have a house plant and it's inside, it gets all dusty and you think, geez, we've got to dust it, but you can't be bothered. So you wait till it rains and you put it outside and then it rains. So the dust gets all washed away. But if you forget about it and then the sun comes out, within half an hour or so, those leaves will just get burnt. Yet that same plant growing outside will not have burnt leaves. So the plant, in response to the sunlight, the one that's been growing outside all the time, is producing something. It's interacting with the sunlight, protecting itself, putting some UV protective on there, some carotenoid compound that's protecting itself from UV. Inside, without that UV stimulus, it's not producing that. So it's just interesting how the plant actually picks up on its environment. Another example would be under insect attack. If you've got a crop of plants or in a forest situation, if an insect comes in and it starts nibbling away at the plant that's getting eaten, at that point where it's starting to get nibbled on, it's sensing that and it's sending out a response. First, there'll be a release of volatile compounds, and one thing that does is it's part of a hormonal system that sets off a response within the plant that starts the production of feeding or deterrent compounds to the insects, so it can upset their gut or it can taste terrible. But the other thing that's been happening with these volatiles is that the plant is letting out these gaseous compounds. They're being perceived by the plants around it. So that plant is effectively signalling or talking to its neighbours, saying, this is what's happening to me. You'd better ramp up your system because this bug's coming your way.
Amazing.
It is. It just blew me away that this is actually happening.
Just back to the house plant. So he's got outside. Do we say he or she?
Yeah.
And he got.
It
They
could
got
be a
burnt.
he. It could be a she. It could be both.
Yes. So that it got burnt, but it can adapt.
So what happens? Yeah, it can. So usually, like us, if you get sunburn, the bit of sunburned skin is damaged. So you look at new cells to replace those ones. Often with a plant, the leaf itself will die, and the new leaf that grows will interact with the level of light, and it'll protect itself to the right level. So
It's amazing.
it is amazing.
We could probably learn a lot about our humanness by studying the plants, by what you're saying. You know that they adapt. You know that they adapt inside and outside, and we live inside and we have skin that's not protected. And so when we do go out, we get burnt. But if you have a look at the indigenous people around the world, they've always been able to adapt to that sun. It's just that now we live inside. I love this. I just love what I'm learning. Can we go to, and this may be jumping, but we can jump backwards and forwards. Can we go to the chemicals that are sprayed on our plants, how the plants, and even looking at genetically modified plants, and what that does, to the plant, to the soil, to the uptake of nutrients? What happens, just as we spray ourselves with chemicals and we don't work as well, what happens to plants?
Wouldn't that weaken the plant's ability? Like if it's covered in chemicals and it doesn't need to fight to protect itself,
it depends what's being sprayed on. I know of instances where some of the pesticides or herbicides that are used as well, if particularly in a crop situation where you're targeting weeds, but also the crop itself may respond in some way to the herbicide or the pesticide. And what you make is a phytotoxic response, so a plant damage in response to that, whatever the chemical is. Now, that in itself sets off a whole stress response in the plant. So you get hormone system around jasmonic acids and the salicylic acids and cytokinins within the plants that are responding to that. So maybe suppressing growth because they're under stress at this stage, or it can trigger other things. But a lot of the time it's a negative impact on the plant. And you can, interestingly enough, I've seen in some instances where they've applied things like foliar fertilizers that are seaweed based to actually help the plant recover. So you use a tonic from another plant, you spray it on it, and it allows the plant to cope, or it reduces that level of toxicity from the other harmful chemicals that have been used.
So it's interesting that you said seaweed. So that's an ocean plant helping a land plant, and that would work better than any other plant. Is that what?
It seems to. Seaweeds are awesome things. They seem to be loaded with various minerals that the plant needs. I mean, they're relatively easy to harvest and produce these foliar fertilizers as well. But, they seem to function very, very well, and the plant most plants seem to be able to absorb or take it up through their leaves. Normally you think of a fertilizer going into the soil, but a lot of these ones are foliar fertilizers just applied to the leaf, so getting direct to where the phytotoxicity has occurred in the plant. So.
And when we consume these plants with their hormones, their cytokines, their phytotoxins, when we consume them, they must be causing us damage. If the plants are like sending them off as an inflammatory response, am I right in saying that? Surely they would be causing inflammatory responses. And the reason why I'm asking this question is that, most of human disease is an inflammation of some sort.
Yeah.
And we seem to have more and more in today's society than we've ever had before. And I'm wondering if it could be the plants that are sick that are making us sick, or the plants that are inflamed that are making us inflamed.
Or perhaps even the soil is so
toxic.
So toxic. Tell us about that, because you raised something before where you said that the plants will send out signals through their root system to attract certain microbes or what have you to help them fight whatever's going on.
And that's a good point, because often what we're trying to control on the plant, so either it's a bacterial infection or some sort of fungi, those sort of things, which are actually damaging to the plant, the type of chemistry that we use, or the chemicals that are used to control that on the plant, actually impact on the biology of the soil. Yeah. And as I said before, the biology of the soil is so important for the plant, for its root system, for its communication with its neighbours, for the way it gets nutrients out of the soil. Often it's the bacteria at the surface of the root system, or the fungi there, that are involved in the breakdown of the organic matter in the soil and part of the transport into the plant. So if you go into a situation where you're using high levels of pesticides and herbicides and those sort of things, you are upsetting that balance quite a bit. And therefore, I think the nutritional value of the plant goes down.
But also, as you're saying there, it's not just the nutritional value that there's a concern then. There's potentially toxicity in the plant that then also has a negative effect on the body. So we think we're eating spinach, getting all of the iron, for argument's sake, but in fact it's not available nutritionally because it didn't actually develop that during its growth phase. But also there's a toxin in that it's extracted from the soil. Or
inflammation markers. So there's inflammatory markers. And I kind of liken the soil and the microbes to our gut and the microbes in our gut. And we're destroying both. One, we're destroying it with antibiotics in the body, and one, we're destroying it with herbicides and pesticides and things like that. So this is what I love, is that I've learnt so much from you in the last couple of days in speaking with you in that plants, we can learn a lot from the plants.
Yeah.
And with your knowledge of that, I just love it. Can you tell the story about the black currants?
Oh, jeez.
Well, that's not all out yet.
It's not out yet.
Sure if I can.
No, I think about the horse. The horse.
Yeah. So
we'll do the horse first, and then we can do you.
Yeah. So black currant. No, we're not.
Well, I was going to say now who's turned into the task. Really?
No, it's just
talking about experiments on himself.
Oh, is that what?
That's what I was talking about.
Is that what you call it now?
Experiments on ourselves.
I see.
No, it's just I did a work for a company once, and they sell black currants, and we were interested to see, because black currants, all these fruits that are richly pigmented, like the berry fruits that have the strong, rich blue or red, vibrant colours. it's usually associated with a particular group of compounds called anthocyanins. So they're strong pigments, but they, in our bodies, they're recognised to be have strong antioxidant properties, which is great. But I was doing some investigation into anthocyanins to look, well, what else could they could do or do in the body, or human physiology or mammalian physiology. A friend of mine, his brother-in-law, had been feeding his horses black currants, and they'd been going away and doing 3-day competitions, so quite intense, show jumping, cross-course eventing and dressage, all those sort of things. Very, very rigorous sort of a workout for a horse. And he noticed that the horses that were getting the black currants, it was almost like they hadn't gone and done these 3 days events. They seemed to be less fatigued or not even fatigued at all. So that interested us to think, well, what, beyond an antioxidant property, what could these black currants be doing? And I did a lot of reading through the literature, and that's where I tend to go. I like to look to see what's been done from a scientific perspective and what's out and published. So I go into the journals and have a look. And the thing with anthocyanins, there's been quite a lot of work done looking at how they impact on the vascular system or the cardiovascular system, and it's called a vasodilation response, where they open up the capillaries, and you seem to get, once you've consumed black currants or the anthocyanins in the red berries and those sort of things, you get this opening up of your capillaries, and you get it's almost like a resistance to or a drop in the resistance of blood flow through the system, so that more oxygenated blood seems to get to your extremities. So if you're suffering from poor circulation, I mean, a dose of black currants or anthocyanins just opens up those channels and gets the blood moving. So I had I'm also into breeding horses, race horses, and I got a mare from a stud. They gave her to me because they'd tried for about 5 or 6 years to get her in foal, and they couldn't. So she'd produced two foals while she was younger, but they effectively believed that she'd become infertile. So I thought, well, I did, once again, you do a bit of reading, what causes horses to go infertile? And I found that often one of the causes could be a reduced blood flow to the ovaries and the uterus and those sort of things. So I thought, well, hey, I wonder if feeding the horse up on black currants is going to do anything to it. So I decided that I'd breed from this mare, and the people that had her at the stud thought I was stupid to try it, but I thought, well, I'll feed her up in the black currant. So for 2 months before I sent her away to a stallion, I fed her up every day on a handful of black currants. And lo and behold, first pop, she got in foal. So we've got a beautiful 2-year-old right here. So did the next thing the following year. Boom, we've got another foal just on the ground now. So I strongly believe anthocyanins, if you've got circulation issues with blood issues around circulation, even if you've got diabetes and those sort of things and reduced blood flow and that sort of stuff, then I think a healthy dose of black currants or anthocyanin-based powders or berry fruit is going to help you.
But let's talk about anthocyanin by itself as opposed to wrapped up in the berry or wrapped up in the currant. So what's your belief that can we extract that anthocyanin out and give that to people, or do you think that it's the synchronicity of the plant that is actually doing the trick?
So I think what we've done is we've also, because obviously the juice of a lot of berries, including blackcurrant, is quite valuable in drinks and those sort of things. So what you end up having left is the skin and all the other tissue of the berry left, of the currant. And that's often where a lot of the vitamins, the anthocyanins, and all the health benefits of the berry are at, not necessarily in the juice. The juice is full of sugar, but the actual tissue of the currant and those sort of things is really, really potent in terms of its health benefits. So one of the processes that you can do, I mean, you can extract things in various ways, but I mean, black currants just simply freeze-dried down, so you're not adding a solvent, you're not doing anything there, and you're simply powdering the whole lot that seems to be effective.
So it's still in its it's all it has is taken the juice out of it, and it's still in its whole form. And
Yep.
yeah, I just find that absolutely fascinating.
So I'm a strong believer in the synergistic behaviour of the whole organ. So the
It
whole
stands
berry,
to
that
reason,
sort of
doesn't
thing.
it? I mean, if there was any benefit in us having the juice, then it would have been created that way.
Yep.
So it stands to reason that the whole thing's created for the holistic and synergistic value to itself and to its consumer.
There's a new book out. It came out at the end of February, and it's called Vitamania, and it talks about how we have become obsessed with single nutrients and how these single nutrients are made. You know, because they soon figure out how they can make curcumin and not use turmeric, or they'll soon find out how to make anthocyanin. Is that how I say it?
Anthocyanin, yeah.
I know that's an antioxidant, and I always see it written, and I never know how to say it. But they'll soon figure out how to make that from the petrochemical industry. So I always make sure people realise that it's the food that is creating this, as well as that one compound, because there will be other antioxidants within that plant
completely.
as well.
Yeah, even though I say anthocyanins, it's loaded with other things as well.
Yeah.
And I mean, the thing is, people usually assume that the bright colour of berries is simply associated with attracting some sort of dispersant, whether it be a bird or some sort of creature that eats the berry, then goes away and deposits the seed somewhere else. And that's one part of it. But I think the reason why because if that was the case, all you'd need was just a rich colour and the reward of having the juice in there. But I think what happens is, because plants and animals have evolved alongside each other, one of the things that the animal that's feeding on that berry gets is a good nutrient source as well. So that by the plant putting in all these valuable nutrients into that berry, the bird or the whatever that's feeding on that is getting the nutrition out of it. So by default, that's getting a decent feed, that's getting a life, so it can breed and produce more offspring that then come and help out the plant again and keep going. So there's benefit in having those rich little nutrient
Greg,
berries.
we worked together a long time ago in New Zealand, and one of my favourite stories that you told and taught me was all about how Australia and New Zealand were once part of Gondwana land, and how over the years we separated. Can you just explain the story behind why New Zealand has no predators and how much the plant kingdom affected it, as opposed to somewhere like Australia that everything can eat you, bite you, sting you, burn you and kill you,
I love how you say it's Jurassic Park.
including the grass. A thing here called nutgrass actually ate my pool, I'm just saying.
At your pool,
Yes.
your swimming pool.
Yes. What do you think I said?
No, I thought that's what you said. But I could not see the logic in that.
It came up through the pool.
Oh, it did. Grew up
It
through
ate the grass. It ate the pool. But anyway,
Wow.
they warned me of it. They said
did?
nutgrass is dangerous and it will
Right.
get in your pool. And I said, what grass can grow through 3 layers of heavy-duty plastic? And this mother did within 6 weeks.
Oh, my. Right. Okay,
So-
please explain.
Well, I guess the thing about New Zealand is its isolation. I mean, we tend to think in the southern hemisphere, Australia, New Zealand, we're all at the bottom of the world. We're relatively immune from the rest of the world. But New Zealand, when it split off from Australia, it was, or the land masses separated. I don't like to think we split off from Australia, but so there was Antarctica, there was India as well, was part of it, South America as well. We're all part of this big Gondwanic landmass. Now, when it all started to break up, when New Zealand found itself by itself, no land mammals were actually on New Zealand. So, in all the other big land masses throughout the world, there are land mammals. So the evolutionary path has meant that in other lands, that the plants have evolved along with the mammals. So in New Zealand, we didn't have this scenario happen. We had a wealth of birds, so different types of birds, and they effectively evolved to in relationship with the plants to form the roles that mammals form in other birds. So we have the likes of the kiwi, that's like no other bird in the world type scenario, but it's the equivalent of a rat or something that goes around on the forest floor picking up various small invertebrates and things. We have a lot of flightless birds. We've got, I think, the only flightless parrot in the world, the kakapo. So it's rare that when you look at flightless birds that you have a parrot that's a flightless bird. We had flightless ducks, flightless geese, all those sort of things. We had huge moa, which related to the emu and the ostrich and those sort of things, the ratite birds. And they effectively formed the browsing animals like a deer would be in the forest. But it's interesting because
Wow.
a lot of the plants and things in New Zealand haven't got these defense mechanisms that you get, or the toxins that are associated with keeping mammals away. So a lot of plants have produce toxins that are anti-mammal, so they deter mammal grazing. In New Zealand, they don't really have that. So when the possum from Australia was introduced to New Zealand, it's had
Say that again.
the
Where was it
possum
introduced from? Yes,
from
that's
Australia.
right.
I have no idea why that was done. I think it was for
That
fur.
was to make fur
but-
G-strings that sell in a lot of souvenir shops, I'm just saying.
Oh, for
But
real?
jeepers,
And nipple warmers, say no more.
Are you allowed to eat possum in New Zealand? Because
They're a
you're not
pest.
allowed to
They're a
eat possum
pest.
in Australia,
You
except in Burney Island.
You can effectively do what you want with them because they are that big a pest. They're actually destroying the native bush. And it's terrible because you'll see huge tracts of native bush that are just dying because they're being munched on by possums. But see, that's it. The plants in New Zealand haven't evolved along the likes of possums and those sort of things. So they haven't got the type of leaf, or they're not producing the toxins that deter or reduce the level of grazing. So
Do plants have feelings? If you rip a carrot out of the ground, or if you rip a corn off do they
She's never going to eat
they
vegetables.
can.
Oh, I never will, actually. It's the last time I've had a pea. That's it.
I wouldn't say they have feelings the way we
Do
have
they-
feelings,
but
but
they have a
they can
sensation?
respond. They can respond to stress, and they can inform their neighbours that something not very nice is happening to them. So this is where you get the release of these volatiles, or
No.
particular hormones or volatile hormones like ethylene that informs the neighbour that something nasty is happening to me.
So
and depending on the type of volatile that's being released as well, it could be a signal of what exactly is happening to it.
So while an animal is squealing, the plants are releasing ethylene. It's about the same thing, I'd say. Wouldn't you, Kim?
Oh, it just seems savage to me. So when it's like grape season at the winery and they go picking the grapes, I would have thought that would have been a joyous and magical occasion.
So that's probably not too bad because the plants are geared up to disperse their seeds and the fruit. They want that to happen. They want the fruit to be harvested and taken away. They want the seeds to be dispersed, so that's fine. But it's when you collect a broccoli or something and then you put it into a pot of hot water.
No, tell me what happens there.
They'll release ethylene, and that's telling everybody they're squealing.
They're like putting crayfish into a boiling pot of hot
No,
water.
but they cut the broccoli off.
Uh-oh, she's gone. There's no more veggies. You can have fruit, but you never can have vegetables again after this discussion.
I know it's terrible, isn't it?
Devastating to me. What about a cabbage and a cauliflower? And
Same, or a carrot. I mean, you can take it, if you think they're all dead, take your carrot out of your fridge and plant it again and get your carrot going. So they're just sitting there. Yeah.
They're amazing. Can we talk about hybridisation?
Yep.
So Mendelssohn, can we start back at Mendelssohn?
You can start picking.
Is that when you think the first thing started? Can you tell us who Mendelssohn was and what hybridisation is all
So
about?
he was a monk. Geez, this is going way back 20 odd years in my studies, but I guess simplistically, because that's all I really know it as well, is Mendel is considered to be the father of genetics, I guess, because he was able to show that traits were heritable and you could actually predict. And he did a lot of his work with peas, I think it was, and either different coloured peas or different. The seed coat of the pea was either rough or smooth and that sort of thing, and he could show that by crossing one particular coloured pea with another coloured pea, the colour transfer may skip a generation, but then in the following generation that he could breed back and he would have various colour patterns based on what the two grandparents were. So in that way he, I guess, is the father of hereditary, to show that you cross one thing with another thing, you can actually predict what's going to happen. So, and he linked the transfer of traits from one generation to the next generation, and show that through plant breeding you could select various characteristics and get them in generations further down the track.
And that was back, what, 1800 and...
Oh,
can you remember? It was about,
I can't remember. It was early though.
It was like the 18, maybe 60s or something like that. I can't remember exactly either. But that was the beginning of man manipulating, or do you think man was manipulating the breeding of...
I think that they'd been doing it for years and years and years, millennia before then. They just didn't realise that about genes and the linkage of traits. So they were always just naturally, when we moved from this hunter-gatherer sort of scenario into settled down communities and with this farming sort of scenario, we were always selecting the plants that survived a drought or the plants that grew better under whatever soil types, those sort of things. So that's when we would have started to select these things.
So really there are no, probably, there's this whole paleo diet. Really there's probably not many paleo plants around anymore, because there would have been selective breeding throughout. Perhaps Australia, I think about Australia, we have a lot of native plants that are being lost because of farming, but there are people that are stopping the farming and getting rid of the cattle and getting these native plants back. So, we're getting the probably very, very old plants that were around. But one of the things that I would like to talk to you about is this hybridisation of all of our foods, but especially wheat. So wheat's been hybridised. The hybridisation has been linked to problems in our health. What do you believe about the hybridisation of the wheat grain back in the 70s and 80s? What do you believe about that and it causing the amount of gluten intolerances that we have today?
So if you go right back, because what you can do now with some of the genetic tools that we've got is we can see where a gene actually came from in a particular species. With wheat, it's likely that the first hybridisation was a natural one that occurred in the wild. Humans weren't involved whatsoever. So it was two species living relatively close together, relatively closely related as well, and they naturally hybridised. And then it was probably a second hybridisation that occurred under cultivation, human influence, that then brought about the true wheat that we know it today. So I don't think hybridisation is necessarily the evil thing here. I mean, what happens is it's when you start to select for particular traits. And the thing is, when if you're focusing on one trait, unless you're selecting for a suite of other traits, you tend to naturally select against it. Unless the selection pressure's there to keep that trait going, it's not necessarily going to keep coming through in the next generation. So when you start to look at something like gluten and you want to breed up high gluten concentration grains, then you start selecting for gluten. A lot of the other nutrition may go from that, because you're only wanting the properties that gluten brings to what you want to do now, which is basically
make great bread.
Make bread.
And it goes back to what we were saying originally, in that you need the whole fruit, or you need the whole seed, rather than just selecting pieces of it in order for it not to become disrupted.
So you're saying that the wheat then, so people then wanted to feed a hungry planet. There was probably a noble cause maybe around that bread. We were talking about it yesterday, that you just don't see the African nations now showing so much starvation and things like that. So have we solved it on one level?
So, and that's probably it. We've solved it on one level, but then we've introduced a whole lot of others, because I guess back around from the 40s through the 60s was what's been coined the Green Revolution. So what happened was and
Before we talk about the Green Revolution, why was it called the Green Revolution?
Because it needed a name.
So it wasn't green,
honest,
was it?
It wasn't red.
It wasn't green.
It wasn't red.
It wasn't red, it wasn't white.
And it wasn't actually, it was something that started to occur, and I guess this is like, no one sat down to have a green resolution, and the green has come because it was agricultural based, as opposed to communism, which is the red or the other sort of thing. So they call it this green revolution because of the whole agricultural side to it. That's my understanding. I can be corrected on that. But what happened was it was one particular guy, I forget his name, but you may know
Norman
his name.
Borlaug?
Norman Borlaug. He had lived a life where he was exposed to a lot of the famine and those sort of things. So his idea was, well, how can we produce these crops that are actually going to feed these people? So he sort of looked, I guess, at why a lot of crops failed and how we could make them more productive. So there were a couple of things involved. It was there was a major breeding effort to make the straw that holds up wheat or the straw that holds up rice stronger. So they dwarfed it. So they used genetics from other related species across, say, wheat or rice. And they looked at, well, what have we got in that whole gene pool here that we can use to produce these high-yielding, stronger plants. And one of the other issues was, particularly with wheat, is that with wheat seed, naturally the wheat grains shatter from the plant and they're dispersed like that. So that if you're going to harvest them, you don't want to pick it and then it just all falls out on the ground. So one of the things or traits it was selected for was wheat that actually retains its seed, or the seed doesn't shatter off. So you could then go through and you could harvest it with a mechanised harvesting system, and the seed wouldn't be left on the ground. You could collect it and those sort of things. So one of the other things was to have a very short but strong straw, and the reason for that was you could then, because part of the genetics of the plant was one side of it, the other side was then you could bomb these things with fertiliser, and they would only grow still so high, but you'd get very good production of grains and those sort of things. And only growing that high, if they grew this high, they would fall over. Once again, you couldn't harvest them. So they'd only grow so high, and they'd retain the seed, and then you could harvest them. But what that meant was there was a heck of amount of fertilisers going into the environment, and a lot of with the other side of it as well, you then have to control weeds and pests and all those sort of things. So more and more pests and herbicides are being used, and over time you're starting to select these varieties that have herbicide resistance or pesticide resistance. And more recent times, and what you're seeing through America now, is that most of the large grain crops are engineered to be herbicide and pesticide resistant, so you can actually use more and more of them. Your crop is more resistant to them. It won't get the ill or the phytotox that we talked about earlier, but it means that you've got more of this going into the environment. And with the early genetically engineered stuff, it was around these resistance to chemical herbicides and things. And so what happened was the communities around were often getting more exposed to these chemicals. And I mean, it's the same through Asia and Africa, where these plants that were bred up through the Green Revolution have been released. There's just been more fertilizers used, more, and what happens is you're producing plants that are really taking the nutrition out of the ground, because these are high productive units now. So the soil and that can't cope with them effectively. We used to get good small plots of land where the owner of the land was able to manage it and feed his family, and they'd share in feeding the communities and those sort of things. What happened now was that you had these highly productive plants that were sucking the nutrition out of the soil. You had to bomb it with other fertilisers and those sort of things. you bring in irrigation as well, because these things need a lot of water. So then that has a downside as well, where you start to increase the salinity of the soil. So effectively, you're taking big chunks of land out of the productive system. So
it just has a huge knock-on effect, doesn't it?
it does. So you tamper with one thing, and then you affect a whole lot of other things.
And then we've not only affected the plants and the environment and the water systems and everything like that, but then when we consume it, we've really affected the human body. When you look at the sickness in our children, I was just writing a foreword for a new school lunch book, and actually written by Pete Evans, and I thought, well, I'm just going to look at the statistics, and 40%. This was back in 2003 and 2004, and I couldn't find more modern statistics. But 10 years ago, 41% of our children under the age of 15 had lifelong illnesses. The growth between 2009 and 2012, which is only 3 years of autism, jumped, I think it was 15%. So that's in 3 years, it's jumped 15%.
It's amazing.
So I don't know. I listen to you, and you're in the plant world. Why aren't other people in the plant world getting this? Or is there a revolution happening?
I think there is a revolution happening now.
What colour's this one?
Where
green, red, white's gone.
but you can have the new green or whatever. and I think I know a lot of people are anti biotechnology and those sort of things, but there is a movement now, and one of it is, you sort of alluded it to before, that we have lost a lot of the native plants, but not only native plants. If you think of all our crop species and those sort of things, because of the breeding programs, we've lost a lot of the genetics that were associated with the wild type species. So those that were the ancestors of these things, they've sort of been discarded, they've been replaced. Now what's happened, and the Green Revolution was a prime example. I mean, you were able to feed the masses, but one of the things I think that was left out when they selected the traits to have in those plants that they were breeding up was a lot of the nutrition in the grain. So while you had people that weren't now starving to death, there was malnutrition associated with it. Because these plants had high yields, but they didn't necessarily have the high nutritional content that they had in the wild type.
And you know what most people don't know, because it's been happening since about the 60s and 70s, and maybe even before, is that they now fortify all our flour with B vitamins, as well as in Australia they must fortify it with folic acid, and now our bread must be fortified with iodine. So most people don't even realise that every bit of flour that they buy now has been fortified with folic acid and B vitamins, in Australia especially, and in America it's the B vitamins. How are these B vitamins being made? They're not from the plant. They're usually made, like B1 is from acetone, So this is the thing.
Well, we're not even eating food.
No, we're not. We're actually putting in fortifications that are synthetic vitamins, so that we can eat these junk foods that are being planted by these big multinationals. And, there's a real push to go back to the farms like Joel Salatin's farms, where you've got so many things happening on the farm, and it's not just a monoculture. Can we perhaps move away from... Actually, can I ask you one more question about the wheat? Is it all right? I'm being a little bit of a...
Hog?
Hog, yes.
No, I didn't say that.
You do not believe that it's the hybridisation that has probably caused the gluten intolerances we have in Australia or in the world at the moment. What do you believe that it is?
Well, I think there's probably always been, and it's not necessarily gluten, but we all have some issues around some sort of food. There's a lot of different allergies around there, and some of us are particularly have an allergy towards gluten. Now, part of that is that we seem to be getting more exposed to gluten-containing foods now. And the thing too is that foods that may not have contained gluten in the past, because of the wheat varieties that we're using now, have high levels of gluten in them. So in the past, where if you may have been gluten intolerant, the odd bit of gluten every now and then may have given you an upset tummy. You may not have even known it was associated with gluten because you weren't eating that regularly. But now it's hard to avoid gluten, even just from a daily basis, if you're eating out, or even what you're finding in your house as well. A lot of things actually contain gluten, and it's not necessarily just in bread, it's in coatings, it's in flavourings, it's in shampoos.
Skincare.
Yeah, so we are just overloaded with this stuff. And I mean, at some point your body, and this is beyond the poor people that are truly gluten intolerant, but at some stage our bodies can get sensitized to these things, and it's just from overexposure to them over a large time period. Then our body sort of has a bit of a memory, and it says enough is enough, and it starts reacting to that. And it may take months or years to actually come back to being able to take something like
And is
gluten again.
that because what you were saying before was that the wheat was chosen, obviously bread was the staple, so therefore they chose a high glutinous grain to keep producing, which means even though we mere mortals think wheat is wheat, each wheat or different wheats had higher levels of certain things in it, so the ones with the most gluten would be the best one to produce, given bread is a staple for nearly every single family on the planet. Is that also causing the sensitization?
Yeah, I guess it's, we live in a fast food world these days. Everything is fast, and that's the same with the crops now. When they select crops, and you look at those ginormous grain fields that they have in Australia, some parts of New Zealand, and the United States as well, they are massive. But it's there, they want to produce one particular thing, and the quality of that grain for bread making is the gluten content. So you select for high gluten levels in there so that you're mass producing it, and bread has become a fast food staple now. You just look at the McDonald's, everything. You get buns that have got... Yeah,
we were saying it yesterday, weren't we? Everywhere you look, there's bread served with everything.
So people have moved away from making their own bread at home, and in the old days, 200 years or so, we would be growing, or you'd get wheat or barley or whatever grown in your local community from seeds that have been passed down from generation to generations. Suddenly it was, well, we need to mass produce bread. What does bread need for the mechanisation of it through factories and those sort of things? Just the production system, it's got to be high gluten if we want it to rise like this, we want it to absorb water, we want it to do this.
And what do you think then about spelt or einkorn? What do you think then about the older grains?
So I mean, I think that's, yep. And I mean, a lot of people can probably use those as opposed to the wheats that we have now, which have these real high concentrations of gluten. But it's interesting because I hope, and I think there is a movement to get some of these older genetics, and I don't mean bring them and cross them back with our current wheats and those sort of things, but keep them as varieties themselves that we can start producing.
Yes.
And I mean, what we've got to do is not go down this whole green revolution track thing where we look at, well, how can we turn that into something that's mass produced and forget about the nutritional aspects of it, because we know that there are things that our systems can't tolerate, and we're not geared up to have some things daily in our diets. Once a week or every so often is fine. We can cope with that sort of thing. But when you start to go down and your diet is made up of 5 sort of things and you're constantly overloading with them, your body responds to it.
Well, people are also becoming sensitive to histamines in plants, the nightshades, the salicylates. What is happening there? Like salicylates vary in different types of plants, as do nightshades. Some, plants don't have it. What's happening there? Like, are the plants producing these greater because they're stressed, or?
I think what happens is plants that have higher levels of these things, because they, you want to produce plants that require less care. They're better adapted to surviving in the environment that you're trying to grow them in. So just through the selection pressure of, as I mentioned before, you select something that's better adapted or going to survive better. So by default, you're selecting a lot of these things as well, which are a stress response in the plants, but you're accumulating them in the plant to make it easier to grow. If you bomb it with so forth, that's going to be stressful. Or everything's getting drier these days. If you can't irrigate, or if you do irrigate, you get this buildup of salinity in the soil, so you need the plant to be able to cope with that. So you're selecting these genotypes that carry these traits to be able to do that, and a lot could be some of those compounds that you're talking about. So we may be having higher levels of those in our diets just from the plants that are being selected for mass production.
Wow. This is just disheartening. So here's a question that's burning for me then, in that my diet is 100% plant-based. And I don't think that really matters necessarily whether a person's plant-based or not, because I think the effects...
she is sick.
Yeah.
So I'm just questioning. She's not well. I'm just asking.
This is true. But, so what's the answer for a person? Because I'm sitting here thinking to myself, I'm just going to have to get myself this,
Big garden.
Kick-butt garden, and I've just been outside coughing my heart out, looking at Kimmy's vegetable patch out there, thinking, okay, so I'm going to have to get myself this big kick-butt garden and do it all myself and look after it all myself. But even now what you're saying is the seeds that I would buy, or the seedlings that I would buy, even those have been, and forgive what I'm about to say, but even those have been bastardized to the extent that I risk inflammation from the food. And I wonder why I still feel inflamed even though I eat a plant-based diet. This could be it.
Well, I think probably one of the bigger issues is the residues and things that you'll be encountering on the plant. So it's the pesticides and the herbicides that are just there on the plant. I think, the types of plants that get selected, I mean, they're not, the nutritional aspect is often overlooked, so it's to get the plant to grow better for the guy that's harvesting it, so we can store it better, so we can make better dough or whatever. So there are aspects of that around the nutrition of the plant.
And it's all about yield, isn't it?
It
Rather
is about
than
yield.
nutrition.
Exactly.
It's all about
yield.
yield.
It's about yield.
And there are diggers. Diggers is a place that you can go to, and they have traditional seeds and seedlings.
Yeah.
Well, I think seeds. So you actually can find people who do traditional plants. In Nambour, just near us, we have a lady that has all traditional herbs. She just go up there and just grab some herbs, because herbs are also...
And this is
do you want to talk about herbs?
I think when it comes to, if you're a vegetarian or vegan or that's what you choose to do, I think it comes down to variation as well. Not just have 4 or 5 or 6, and probably vegetarians are probably better than anybody else at doing this, having the variety in their diet, because I'm not a vegetarian. I don't think I could ever be a vegetarian.
But I don't think it matters. I think the fact is, like, even paleo, you're still having a large amount of vegetables and greens and beautiful...
Exactly. And
it doesn't really matter. I think that the same effect is potential there for everybody if the plants that we're buying are affected by...
Yeah, I would be cautious about that. I don't think inherently plants, organically produced plants and those sort of things, I think they're good for you. Yeah. I would be more concerned about how things are processed and what's done in the manufacturing.
Can we change course a little bit? Yes. You now work in the kiwi fruit industry. The kiwi fruit industry in New Zealand was nearly obliterated a little while ago. What is your thoughts around your job? Explain your job and what you do now in order to protect industries like that, and what you see as the future possibilities of, like, Australia's not like the mangoes in Queensland, walnuts down in Victoria. Like, seriously, how do we... Oh, my gosh, Cindy, your dog. The world is
looking at each other and I'm thinking, who's going to say something?
Obi is just licking away there. He's a little bit thirsty.
This is hard.
What dog?
What dog? It was Karen.
Oh, that's just nasty. I will get you back for that. That was nasty.
All right, go
No, I
on.
think
Sorry.
so what happened? This is globally worldwide. Kiwi fruit came under the attack of a particular pathogen, which is a Pseudomonas bacteria. Now, traditional ways of dealing with bacteria and fungi, but bacteria is to use things like copper. So you put a lot of copper onto the plant, and the bacteria doesn't like copper, so you try to take the bacteria out that way. But one of the things we learnt through dealing with this disease in kiwi fruit is that the bacteria will always get in to the vine. It's a systemic disease. It gets in by the leaf or through wound sites or those sort of things.
It's just like a human, isn't it? It's just like a human.
So we can't put copper in the plant. So we thought, well, how do we actually protect the plant from this scenario? We're doing a lot of work now looking at the microbiology of the soil, the microbiology on the plant, so just what normally inhabits the plant itself. Because one of the things is, can we get the environment itself, so the environment of the plant and the environment that the plant lives in, to actually fight off this bacteria, because it's effectively a foreign bacteria into the system. And the other angle we took, so we're doing a lot of work in that, looking at beneficial microbes that are there within the plant. There are a lot of bacteria and fungi and things that live within plants, endophytes, and they're beneficial to the plant. They're there for some reason. They can be associated with things from pest resistance through to drought tolerance and those sort of things. So we've been trying to see, well, how do we encourage that good biology within the plant and on the soil? The other thing too is we were looking at, do these plants have their own immune system suppressed somehow? So can we actually, people used to talk about the health of the plant. My plant won't get it because I'm organic. My plants are therefore healthy. And that's great, but a lot of the organic people, their plants suffer just as bad. The way I like to look at it, it's not so much healthiness, it's more fitness. Is the plant fit to fight off this particular bacteria? Has it got its immune system functioning to fight off this thing? And it's the same with humans. I mean, a healthy human and a fit human may be two different things depending on what the scenario is. If all the food dried up tomorrow, the fit, skinny, healthy people that are running around, they won't last too long. But those that are a bit more robust probably will survive a bit longer. So it depends what the stress is, what makes something fit for the situation. So with the vines here, we were looking at, well, how can we help the vine? What is it that's depressed in the vine to help it fight off this disease? And so we looked, and it's interesting, one of the key hormones that's associated with bacterial resistance is a hormone, or plant hormone, called salicylic acid. So we've done things to try and boost the plant's own system to fight the disease itself. So we're encouraging the plant to produce things like salicylic acid. Now, it's interesting that, and this goes back to the whole essential oils and how we use these secondary metabolites. Salicylic acid is a secondary metabolite. How we use these in our own daily lives. So salicylic acid is
Aspirin.
Yeah.
So it's beneficial for the plant and humans and our physiological system. That has anti-stress properties as well, anti-inflammatory properties as well. So we have evolved alongside plants doing this thing to protect themselves, and a lot of those compounds working at the cellular level in a plant will also be beneficial to us as well.
As we ingest them or live around them? Or both?
Yeah, ingest them and use them on your skin and those sort of things.
This is why I love essential oils.
So would salicylic acid be a salicylate?
Now, I'm not too sure about the chemistry of the salicylates. Yeah.
We must look that up and give our listeners what that is, because all of a sudden you're saying salicylic acid increases its immune system. And do you know that there's a paediatrician on the Gold Coast who, when a child has a gut issue where they cannot even tolerate their mother's milk and they have to go on a medical feed, they say do not eat organic foods, only eat foods that are conventionally grown, because the organic foods are higher in the salicylates than the conventional ones. Which makes me think what you're saying is that you're trying to strengthen the immune system. Maybe our organic foods have a stronger immune system, therefore higher salicylates, and that's why the conventional is what they can tolerate.
Wow.
I have been trying to figure that out. Why would that be?
That makes sense, doesn't it?
Well, it does. It actually makes so much sense. Thank you for that.
What's that? What does Google say? What's the difference between salicylic acid? So while you're finding out about that, because believe it or not, we've actually come to we should be at the end of our time. So
No, we got to do mushrooms yet.
I know. Do we keep going?
Can we just do mushrooms? Just as I think it's really important.
Okay, well, ask about your mushrooms, then I want to finish on my question.
Well, no, you finish on your question.
No, mine's more interesting.
Okay.
Oh, you're funny.
Just briefly, maybe we could talk about mushrooms next time you're in Australia.
Yeah, cool.
But just briefly, the power of mushrooms.
So I think, it's fungi in general. I think, like plants, there are compounds in fungi that are beneficial to us, and often we've evolved to eat these things if they haven't killed us. The ones that have survived keep eating them. So fungi are like that, and there's a lot of good compounds within fungi. Some of them, there's been a lot of research done looking at how they affect our physiologically, our own hormone balance and those sort of things, particularly
Magic ones.
Magic, yes, exactly. Yes, the hallucinogenic ones and all sorts, yeah. So there are a lot of bioactive compounds in fungi as well, and they have lots of different physiological roles. So some of the areas that I'm quite interested in is being in my mid-40s now, as you start to notice your body, how it's not necessarily that it's aging, it's that it seems to take you twice as long to do things that you normally would have been able to, or maintain a level of fitness that you're happy with.
You have to work
So I thought. So I've been trying to understand, well, why is that? Is it simply that biologically we've reached a certain age, or what is it that's behind that? And then you look, and because I'm fascinated with the hormonal system in plants, I was doing a bit of research to say, well, is there any tie-in between the hormonal system in ourselves and this aging process? Because that hormonal system is really a chemical communication that goes systemic throughout your body, and you have ratios of different hormones there that are all synergistically working together to give you what you are effectively, your health and your well-being. And I was interested to say, well, is there a relationship between aging and what's happening with our hormonal system? And in men, it's clear that all the evidence shows that I think past 20, the levels of testosterone start to drop off. So I thought, well, then you do a bit more research and say, well, what exactly, apart from the obvious, does testosterone do in the male body? And it's all sorts of things like muscle tone, skin tone as well, all those sort of things. And so instead of looking to see, well, let's just inject some more testosterone, what is it that's starting to fail or just slow down that's actually producing that testosterone? Or that? Why is the hormonal system slowly getting tired or slowing down? And can you actually ramp it up again or reinvigorate it? So effectively, as we were doing with the plants, get your own system to do the work again. And so it's interesting. So I looked through what exactly some of the bioactive that could be involved in this, and some of them seem to be, there seems to be quite a bit of work around certain types of mushroom. So I was quite interested to get hold of some different types of mushrooms, and then just put myself on a diet of these mushrooms and see what the effects were on them. I feel younger today than I did 3 years ago.
we will,
and that's also.
We will definitely, because by the time you probably come back, you will have done probably some more experiments with this. And I think every male will be listening to it.
Cool.
I would
like
say every
it.
male will listen to it.
I would like my
like it.
son on those mushrooms instead of mass nutrition protein supplements.
Well, that's the beauty as well, because it's not, you don't load yourself up with protein. I didn't change my diet at all, but
He just took magic mushrooms.
being on this mushroom, and I took a holistic approach. I thought the mushrooms were going to be part of it, but I wanted, if you're taking the good nutrients out of the mushroom, how do you get that better through your body? And this is the likes of using things like your anthocyanins or your black currants, which help you get it to your extremities and all those sort of things. And this is where I was talking about my mare before, who effectively was infertile, according to the stud. But we fed her up, or I fed her up in these anthocyanins, and we managed to get her in foal. We didn't measure had we increased the blood flow to her uterus, but she was a different horse being on the black currants and the anthocyanins. So
I wonder if
I
women
love
listening
food.
to I wonder if men and women listening to this that are struggling with fertility, maybe if their reason without knowing is the blood flow. It could be one area. You
it
could
can't
try.
help.
It wouldn't
can't
hurt.
It can't
No,
hurt.
It
No.
can't hurt.
So,
But
you
not go and drink Ribena.
No,
No,
Rabin hasn't got it.
I'm just making a disclaimer
No,
here.
it's-
Eat whole black currants.
Yeah.
Eat
whole
food.
black currants and blueberries,
Yeah.
wherever the
Yeah,
anthocyanin
exactly.
is.
A good berry diet, yeah.
So one of the things that I just love you to explain, when we walked through the kauri forests in New Zealand together, and then we were on the beaches holding the seaweed and looking at things like kumaraho in New Zealand, which was like the gum digger's soap, and realising it had its own self-lathering properties, which was right by the kauri trees, which produced this amazing gum resin that was really sticky. The soap itself, the gum digger soap, the kumaraho, we used it in the rivers when we were there together, washing our hands. And one thing I just would love you to explain, because I know we've got a lot of Kiwi followers, is the whole thing around giganticism and why the kauri tree grew just so straight up and down, and why it's used in our timber building of houses, and why it's such a beautiful wood. And do you know much about the Australian differences, or is there just a little something you can give us around both Australia and New Zealand? I mean, I was fascinated with the giganticism story, so...
Well, I think Australia's got its own gigantic things, and
Yeah, tell me about it.
I mean, but
Spiders
even
is one.
even the plant world, I think it's got the tallest tree, or
Yes.
one of the eucalypts,
Yes.
and it's also got, I think,
And
it's,
the largest palm, I think, is here. And is it the largest palm that someone was telling me about? You know how we have the silver fern, which is quite a low growing. They've got actually the tall. I was with some plant lover there not long ago, telling me that Australia has the tallest palm.
palm tree. Oh
Yeah.
wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think also there's another unique thing where, as we were talking about the connection of the root system earlier on with plants, I think it's either the oldest living plant association or it's the most extensive single genotype is also in Australia, and it's a single plant that has reproduced vegetatively for, I think it's thousands of years.
wow.
So I'll have to look that up, but
Yeah.
I remember it was
Well, let them have something that was good.
fascinating. Yeah, or you can Google it as well and have a look. It's amazing. But the thing is, when in New Zealand, as I said before, it was predator free. So effectively, a lot of plants in the environment there, it's really lush. If you've ever been to New Zealand, it has a lot of rain, so things
Impenetrable.
Things grow. Things grow very well there. And it's a relatively mild climate as well, not too extreme, well, depending on where you are. But it's a very lush climate. And that particular family of trees, the kauri belong to, is a Gondwana species. You'll find them in Fiji. You've got a Queensland kauri as well. And up through Southeast Asia as well, you'll find the kauris and the podocarps as well. But in New Zealand, and it's very good in climate, it's ideal for them. And the trees, they live for thousands of years old, but they get absolutely ginormous. And the beauty of the kauri tree is, with other trees, I mean, the giant sequoias and those sort of things, they taper. If the taller they get, they taper. But with the kauri, and you can Google and have a look at the kauri trees, they are just one big column of timber that doesn't taper. And they are absolutely huge. And The biggest one alive now is ginormous Tane Mahuta, but they believe that the largest one ever measured was 2 times the size of the circumference of Tane Mahuta. So an absolutely ginormous tree that would have dwarfed any giant sequoia and those sort of
We
things.
had the photos of us hugging that tree. Remember, we were up there, and there's something about the forest. They're very different here in Australia compared to New Zealand. The smell, the minute I hit New Zealand shores, I just get the smell of New Zealand. I get the same thing here in Australia. They're very unique. One final question I'd like to ask is, do plants release, is it a pheromone that they release the way we release, or is it is the essential oil?
They have
part
their
of
own
that?
signature, yeah. So it's I call them volatiles, if you like. So that they are producing a particular gases that will be almost like a fingerprint for that plant. So you could effectively train a dog to sniff out a particular type of plant if you wanted, based on what the essences or volatiles that are being released from that plant. Yeah.
So is it the volatiles that make essential oils? Is that
So the essential oils are volatile compounds as well. So it's the gases that are coming off it. So
they're
yeah.
your beautiful essential oils?
I know, and the exciting thing that Greg and I are working on together at the moment, Greg is officially on the 28 board of directors, just saying. You've got your doctor, I've got mine.
And you're happy?
But, I mean, I could listen to Greg forever, and I love the way he explains things and the way he, his love of plants. Just the three of us, Greg, have a real love of nature and love being in nature. But I think what you bring to it is just the magic of the unspoken world of the plant kingdom, which gives us a whole. I mean, I think I would so love you when you come back again to talk about what we're doing with the extensive range with
Cool.
28.
Yeah, I'd love to.
But is there any take home that you could recommend to our listeners as far as how do you get more green in your life? I don't mean the wacky-dacky.
Or the green revolution?
Or the green revolution. What would you suggest in order for us to respect, be in harmony with, honour? Like, if you had a message for everybody,
What
would that
I'm encouraging, I've got 2 little children, and they absolutely love this, is have your own garden. If you've got an opportunity, have your own garden. If you've got outside space, start doing it. So you start to learn what it takes to produce a plant, the nutrients that are required, the water, because it's not a simple process, and you nurture them and you bring them through to producing the fruit or the vegetable or whatever. Kids love that, and you get a buzz out of it, and there's nothing better than being able to eat what you've produced yourself. And if you haven't got space outside, do a little herb garden inside or something like that.
Yeah. Oh, you're amazing. We love you. I've just got, Dr. Steve Myers, when he was on, I kind of sat there thinking, oh my God. And now I'm doing the same thing with you. I just love your passion for it and your research. The stuff that you do is phenomenal. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
No
Thank you
worries.
so
Thank
much.
you.
Yeah, it's been good.
I feel like I found something else to explore.
I know.
It feels so fascinating. So thank you very, very much
Cool,
for sharing
no worries.
your time with us. Can't wait to have you back. Cool. And no doubt today's podcast is going to generate a whole world of questions. I mean, as soon as I go home, I know I'm going to start to make a list of all of the things that I want to know. So for everybody who's listening to the podcast, go to our Facebook page at allthews.facebook.com/up-for-a-chat and post your questions there, and we'll make sure that we get them through to Dr. Greg Clark. And also you can go to allthewellnesscouch.com/up-for-a-chat, and you can post your comments there as well. So thank you so much for joining us here on this week's podcast, and we're going to look so forward to seeing you next week at the same time, same station, where you get to be part of the ripple effect that's changing the world. And we're going to see you on the ride. Bye for now.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavour to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.